Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm going to show you how I make my pot roast. It comes out so good. I cannot wait to share this recipe with you. Let's get started. First, I'm going to share with you the ingredients that I use. I am using a chuck roast, and this chuck roast that I'm using is pretty big actually. It's a 4.5 chuck roast pound, so it's 4.5 pounds. I'm going to be using some seasoning salt, some pepper, some cream of mushroom soup. Okay, we're also going to be using some onion mushroom soup. We're going to use some fresh corn, some parsley. We've got our carrots and our celery and some Yukon Gold potatoes. I'm going to show you how to put this recipe together. It's going to come out so good, and it's going to be your go-to pot roast like it is mine. All right, let's get to it. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to go on and prep our veggies. And hey guys, if you are new here, welcome. And if you're a returner, welcome back. And let me reintroduce myself to you. My name is Devon, and I enjoy cooking for my family. And over the years of growing up watching my mom and my aunties in the kitchen, I have learned so much about cooking, prepping, baking, sauteing, you name it, they did it. And I'm excited to share what I have learned over the years with you. And so I invite you to subscribe to my channel. It's free. And if you like this video and appreciate the content, don't forget to show it some love, give it a thumbs up, and click that share button and share this video with a friend or family. Now, once we've prepped our veggies of our carrots and our celery, and we're using about a cup of carrots and a cup of celery, and you want to cut them about 1 inch to 1.5 inches, and that's both the carrots and the celery. You want them about as long as about 1 inch and 1.5 inches. Now with my pot roast, I like to use the fresh corn on the cob. Now with the fresh corn on the cob, I do like to section it off so everyone gets like a nice section of corn on the cob to go on their plate. And so what I do is I take my knife, and you see how I'm rolling it. I'm rolling it and I'm pressing. I went in between a couple of kernels of corn, and I just kind of really seared it. And then you got to use a little bit of strength here, but then once you sear it, you're able to snap it. Now for whatever reason, if you can't do that, don't worry. What you want to do is go on and buy the frozen corn, the frozen ears of corn that are about that size in your frozen food section, and you can use those just as well, okay? And so with this, I'm going to actually end up just using 2 ears of corn. And again, I just take my knife. If you want to do this technique, I take my knife and I roll the corn just like that, just like that. I just kind of roll it like that with my knife, and I'm just scoring it right there in the middle. And again, I'm scoring it, and it does take a little oomph to do this. And so if you don't want to do this, don't worry about that, guys. You can go on and just get you some frozen corn out of the frozen food section, and it'll be just as fine, okay? And so once I've got my corn that I've snapped, I'm going to go on and do my potatoes, and we're using those Yukon Gold potatoes. Now when you're prepping your potatoes, guys, always have your potatoes as you're cutting them in a bowl of cold water, and that's just going to keep your potatoes from getting brown as you're cutting them and you're going through. Now with the potatoes, I'm using about 1 pound of potatoes, okay? Now with the potatoes, if you're going to have the size of about an egg, you're just going to cut your potatoes in half, and I like to leave the skin on my Yukon Gold potatoes. Now if it's bigger than an egg, you want to cut it into 3 different sections. And the reason why with your potatoes, you don't want them too small, because as your pot roast is going to cook, and we're going to do it in 2 different phases, but as your pot roast is cooking, you don't want your potatoes to break down. So you also want to use those Yukon Gold potatoes, because it will stand up. Your potatoes will stand up better to that stewing and that cooking and the baking that we're going to do in the pan, versus using like a russet potato, which tends to really break down, and it's just going to end up breaking down in your pot roast, and you don't want that. You want nice whole pieces of potato. Now next, we're going to go on and I'm chopping up some nice fresh flat leaf parsley, and we're only going to be using about 1/4 of a cup of flat leaf parsley right there. Now, if you don't have any fresh parsley, you can always use some dried parsley, and you only need a tablespoon. So if you don't have any fresh parsley, you can always use some dried parsley, and you're just going to need 1 tablespoon of that, okay? So let's go on and season up our chuck roast. And like I said, I'm using a 4.5 pound of chuck roast, and it's pretty thick too. It's probably about 2-3 inches thick as well. Now I'm going to season it with some seasoning salt. Now I'm using Lowry seasoning salt, but you can use whatever seasoning salt that you have in your kitchen that you really like. And also I'm going to use some coarse black pepper, and that's what we're going to be seasoning up our chuck roast with. Now this chuck roast and my pot roast recipe is enough to feed 6 people. Now if you're feeding a little bit less, you can always cut the ingredients in half, okay? Now with the seasoning that I'm using, I'm going to season all sides with both the seasoning salt and the pepper. I'm going to be using about 1.5 tablespoons of seasoning, and with pepper I'm going to be using about 1 teaspoon of the black pepper as well, because this is a pretty thick piece of meat that I'm working with. Now once you put your seasoning on, you want to make sure that you just kind of rub it, mix it all around just like that. And also something else is you want to, because we're going to be searing our chuck roast, we're going to sear it, and what you want to do is, you see how I have it on my paper towel, and that's to absorb any excess moisture. So when I go and I put it in my pan and we're going to sear, when I put it in my pan to sear, it's going to sear and it's not going to start to boil, okay? And so you want to make sure that any excess moisture on your chuck roast, on your roast that you're using, is all nice and dried up. And how you do that is you let your chuck roast rest on a bed of napkins, all right? Also, when you take your roast out of the refrigerator, you want to let it sit and rest on your countertop for about 20 minutes before you start prepping it. Now, let's go on and start with our Dutch oven, and this is what I like to use when I'm making my pot roast. And I'm just putting in about 1 tablespoon of olive oil, and if you don't have olive oil, you can also use vegetable oil as well. And then once my oil has become hot, I went on and I put in my roast. What we're doing is we're searing our roast. The reason why you want to sear your roast before you start putting it in the oven, before you put in the oven, is because you want to build up some fond in the bottom of your pan, as well as you really want that meat to get nice and seared on all sides. The flavor that it is going to give you to your roast, it is so good, and it really makes the difference just having that nice sear, locking in those juices. And you see how it's coming along there, and you see we've got some fond building up right there in our pan. And to sear your roast, it's going to take about 5 to 6 minutes per each side. My flame for my pot is on medium high, and you know, this is a thick piece of meat, and so I'm trying to turn it here, guys. Something you can also do is this recipe can also, my recipe can also be put in the crock pot. You would still follow the steps that we did at the beginning. You would still go on and sear your meat, but instead of building your pot roast in the pot that we're going to do, the Dutch oven, what you would do is you would go on and transfer your roast on into a crock pot, and then you would just add the ingredients straight into the crock pot. Next, we're going to put in 1 envelope of our onion mushroom soup mix. And so we're just going to go on and sprinkle it right on top, right into the pan. Now, while we're doing this, I have our oven is preheating on 350 degrees. We're also going to use that 1 can of cream of mushroom soup. Now, while we're doing this, my pan is still on, but I have it on low. So I still have my pan on and it's on low. Then I added 1 can of water. Now, after I add that 1 can of water, I take my spoon and I mix everything around. I'm blending in that cream of mushroom soup, and I'm also, what I'm doing is I'm lifting up some of that fond that's at the bottom of our pan when I was doing that with my spoon. Then once I've done that, I add in then my 2nd can of water, and I'm going to keep mixing and blending. And then once I've done this, we're going to go on and add in our rest of our veggies. So I'm adding in those potatoes, and we have a healthy amount of veggies that we are adding to our pot roast, to this pan. And so that's also why I like to use the the Dutch oven because of that height and that depth that you're going to get using the Dutch oven. And so I'm going on, I'm adding in my potatoes that I have, I'm adding in the celery, I'm adding in those carrots, everything in just like that. And like I said, we have a healthy amount of veggies, and trust me, it's going to all fit. Yes, ma'am. We're going to put it all in here today. I'm going to go on and add the rest of that celery and carrots, and I'm going to nestle. I'm going to go on and nestle in my corn on the cob that I have. I'm just going to nestle it in just like that. Now, if you don't have a Dutch oven like I'm using, if you have a high side roasting pan, something that you would use like for cooking your turkey or a big ham, if you have a high side roasting pan, you just go on and sear your roast and go on and build your pot roast inside of your high side roasting pan. And if you don't have a top, don't worry, just go on and use a nice piece of foil. Put that foil all over the top. Go on and make sure that you secure that foil nice and tight to your pan. Now here I've gone on and I added in my parsley. I put the top on my Dutch oven. We're going to go on and put in the oven for 2 to 2.5 hours. Well guys, let's see how we did. Wow, will you look at that? Our pot roast has cooked in our oven for a little more than 2 hours. Our veggies are nice and tender. Wow, that cream of mushroom soup and that onion mushroom pack have blended together to make a nice, rich, savory gravy. I'm going to go on and top it off with a little bit more of my chopped up fresh parsley. And will you just look at that? And as it continues to cool, that gravy just thickens up just slightly more, and it just gets that perfect consistency to go with our pot roast. It looks so good. I went on and I served myself up some, and it just looks so nice. And we did that 2-step, and let me tell you, that 2-step process of going on and searing your meat and then going on and building with that fond in the bottom of your pan with the gravy, how it makes it with the cream of mushroom soup and that packet of onion mushroom. And it just comes out so tender at that 350 degrees. And I went on, and this is going to be y'all bite. I'm going to go on and give you guys the first bite. How about that? Get you a little bit of that potato. Got a little bit of potato. We got some parsley right there. Some nice tender meat. This is y'all bite right there. That nice savory gravy. Let's see how we did, y'all. It is so good. The meat is so tender. Well, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, what are you waiting for? Go on and hit that subscribe button. And if you like this video and appreciate the content, don't forget to show it some love and give it a thumbs up and click the share button and share this video with a friend or family. Well, remember, it is always good when Devon is cooking for the family. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye, everybody.